Yo, Adam.
Yes.
Check it.
Oh, you mean like
Or maybe.
or how about like I'm Adam Menace.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music advice coming at you.
Coming at you emphatically today. Peter, we are dealing with giant steps finally.
We are dealing with giant steps finally. I love this tune. This is an important tune. This is a tune that is part of the canon, as you like to say.
It is part of the canon.
And it's also a tune that sometimes the jazz police are on high alert for.
They are.
They're hovering around. They're listening for it.
Yeah.
Listening for the bass line and stuff.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about some ideas, some hacks that will help you to navigate the changes, kind of conceptually get around practice. You got to practice this tune a lot. You got to learn the solo. You don't have to learn the solo, but that's a good one to start with.
It's a great one. And everybody has to deal with this eventually. So you might as well just bite the bullet and get to it. And what makes giant steps kind of tricky is the fact that it changes gosh darn keys so fast. It goes through in major thirds. It starts in B and then goes immediately to G, then immediately to E flat.
Yep.
Right? And then does the same thing to G, then to E flat, and then to B. And we all have to figure out how to navigate these in a way that doesn't work with functional harmony. Like if you were just to be like, it's not the same thing.
Right.
It's a whole different way of thinking about things.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Now that sounds hip.
Yeah. And the nice thing about it though is as you're working on this, everything's kind of relative. So like you get to that E flat major, and because everything's moving so violently, harmonically, and so quickly, 2 beats each, that the E flat seems like forever.
Yeah.
That's like your little layover, and you're like, oh, no problem.
Like, oh, no, and I gotta go right back to G.
Yeah.
Goodness, yeah.
But really, look, the trick on this tune, and I've never heard anybody play it, well, that didn't have an innate and almost unconscious understanding of the form. Like you cannot be thinking about the chords. We're going to talk about going through it, but you can't be thinking about all these chords. You just have to know them. So a lot of repeated practice, slow, it's going to reward you. But that's not even what our hacks are. Let's get into what our hacks are.
You got to listen to this tune, too. Listen to Coltrane's version.
Luckily, it's an incredibly inspiring recording. So
amazing.
That's not going to be
it's one of the great pieces of art of the 20th century. Yeah,
that's right.
No problem there. But make sure to listen to it a ton. So what's our first hack?
Our first hack is that 4-note shapes are your friend.
Are they ever?
They are your friend, and we're going to give you a bunch. And actually, talking about listening, if you check out Coltrane, how he starts his solo, he plays a number of the 4-note shapes that we can use melodically.
Yeah, what is he doing? Like 1, 2, 3, 5.
That's the first one, right?
Yeah.
And I think that one's the first one that you want to really. And you can learn that. You should learn that in all keys, almost like doing it as an exercise. And we think about at the piano these shapes, and certainly obviously Coltrane's playing on the saxophone. These are melodic ideas. We have a little bit of advantage at the keyboard because you can play them.
Yeah.
But anybody can come and play it on the piano, but it's about breaking it up. And then also as you're learning those, you're already thinking of ways to
break them up a little bit so they're not the same linear shape the whole time. But it doesn't matter. One of the advantage we have at the piano is we can do something like this where we go like, or you play all 4 notes of the shape at the same time. That gets you a great sense of, okay, so if I have this shape here, right, on the E flat, which is like 7, 2, 3, 5, or let's say 7, 2, 3, 13.
Getting hip.
That's pretty hip, right? So I can play them all at the same time on the piano, and now I can see. I can go up, I can go down, I can go up like Skippy, a little skippiness, You can go Skippy down. You can do any kind of variation of those shapes, which is why even if you play saxophone or something like that, having a little piano background can be really helpful with any of these concepts. What makes 4-note shapes good is it fits symmetrically within this.
From a rhythmic standpoint.
Yeah, you're right there.
You can go straight 8th note and have some jolly good times.
And
right?
it's some jolly good times. It fits perfectly. So, just start, like you said. sticking to one shape, one direction, and then practice going in a different direction, and then practice like changing it up as much as you want. And then you can practice, like once you have a bunch of different shapes, there's so many different combinations. 1, 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7,
Well,
9.
I think those are important just to highlight because that's kind of your jazz arpeggio.
Yeah. So break that down again. It's 1, 3, 5, 7.
3, 5, 7, 9.
Yeah.
And really, it's a 5-note shape in a way, but because we're breaking these up as 4-note shapes being your friend, you want to kind of think about them like that because you might do that kind of a thing where you're moving around, and we're going to get into breaking it up rhythmically later, but the idea is that we're identifying those shapes.
And you could practice going in different like geographic locations. You could practice staying in this a very like really like squaring everything in one space, like.
Well, and that's a great thing to be able to do once you get all these.
Right, then you can mix it up.
You can kind of keep, it's almost like your voice leading is right in there, the same way you would, kind of comp behind it.
Love it.
So a couple more before we move on that are fun are 7, 2, 3, 5. And then any of these you can invert to, find some interesting things. 7, and then you can go 7, 2, 3, 13, or 6. So that's like on the D7. And then you talk about voice leading.
Yeah.
And then you can add in some alterations. That's 7, flat 9, sharp 11, 13.
Oh man, super hip.
Yeah.
So
but it's all based
it doesn't
on 4-note
sound like
shapes.
it's not that musical, but like once you start putting it over the changes and you can do that flawlessly, it becomes really a great tool for this. And then you're not thinking like 2, 5, 1. It becomes something different.
Exactly.
So what's number 2?
Number 2 is that 3-note shapes are also your friend.
Oh, you threw a curveball.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 4 notes in terms of like how they lay down rhythmically should be starting to make sense. But we want to think about 3-note because you can pair those with the 4 notes. So it might be, so if we look at just that triad, which is really just an F sharp triad, but it's over B, the 9th, the 5th, and the major 7th. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a little more interesting in some ways than, which is nice, but so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And especially for longer phrases, you hear Train do this a lot. You hear a lot of the great players do that, where you're starting on the and of 1, or it could be even starting, if you adding a couple notes before it to like the and of 4 or whatever. But basically you're breaking it up instead of just although Train makes although Train makes that sound pretty good at the beginning. So it's like but then he babe it up, skip it up. So that's just 3 notes, and really any of these can be the 4-note ones. You just take one note away. So you got the 1, 3, 5, 7. You might go 1, 5, 7.
You can invert that too. You can like on the beat too. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with that.
And then that can lead to some cool rhythmic syncopation.
Awesome.
Well,
Number 3. Now, this is something that we picked up from our dear friend, Jeffrey Keyser.
Yeah. And you were playing this already. You did a little foreshadowing with this bad boy. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So, the changes here, like if we look at the first section, right, it's kind of broken up into 2 sections where the changes move really fast and then it goes into a sort of slower moving 2/5s. But when the changes move really fast, you're right at the top, B major 7, D7, G major 7, B flat 7, E flat major 7.
Yep.
On the recording, the bass does this. Goes down in whole steps, which tells you actually a lot about how you're thinking about this.
And it's whole steps.
One thing that you can do is instead of thinking about this as B major 7 to D7 or D7 over A, you think about this as B major 7, A minor 7, G major 7, F minor 7 to E flat major 7. We know that these minor 7 chords, like the 2 of a 2-5, right?
Yep.
It's like kissing cousins to the 5, the 2,
Right.
right? So
Kissing cousins.
So in a 2-5 to G major, this A minor 7 is the kissing cousin of D7 going to the G. So why not use that? So instead of thinking like this shape, right, where you're here and you go bump, 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 like that, think about it going down in whole steps, the root movement going down in whole steps.
That's some good voice leading right there.
Man, it's so much fun to think about it that way, and it's a whole different way to do it.
Yep. Awesome stuff. All right, so that's number 3.
Number 3.
Descending root movements. Also, just quick to note on that kind of a root movement is easier to hear than.
Yeah.
Like that's a kind of tricky thing, and you can always if you want to sing these, you'll hear how hard it is to hear those intervals. Still important to hear it that way, but.
Yeah, going down whole
bit
tones is a little easier for sure.
That's a good one. Okay, number 4, change keys, not chords.
Well, so this kind of picks up right where we've been talking about. So if we go, the first chord here, B major 7, that second chord, the D7, and we'll put an A there because that's what it is on the recording. That is now in the key of G major, right?
Yeah.
We immediately change from B major, the key of B major, to the key of G major. This is the 5 of G major. So there are oftentimes, I don't know about you when you're thinking about playing this, but I'm not thinking like 5, 1, 5, 1. I'm thinking like B, G, E flat.
Yeah.
Right? It
Gives you more time.
It gives you more time, right?
Yeah.
So I now have 4 beats to think of the key of G and 4 beats to think of the key of E flat. Because both of these chords, right, the D7 to the G, that's all the key of G. The B flat 7 to the E flat 7, that's all the key of E flat. So you can literally just think of you still want to change the chord where it happens, but you don't have to shift into Right. And then it gets even more, once you're there in that second half of the tune.
You really have 2 measures on each chord if you think about it this way.
I'm just thinking about E flat, G, B. I'm changing the tonal centers because especially at the tempo that we played at the intro.
Yeah.
I know we eased our way through that. It's for you and I, but it can be difficult to try to think of every single chord every time.
Yeah, and then you still get sort of the natural symmetry of this tune in which the first half, everything is basically moving twice as fast.
Yeah.
Even though we're elongating it by 2 beats. So we've got, like you said, B major for 2 beats, but then you've got 4 beats. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm shifting it over in the bar lines, but you've got a little bit longer. But then at the bridge, you've got 2 bars on each chord.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Look at what you could do with all this time.
I know. Now it's wow, the changes aren't going by quick enough.
They say
but this does help psychologically with navigating it as well.
They say you can't buy time, but I think we've just bought some time.
We bought ourselves a little bit of time. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. So that was number 4. Number 5 is in our final Giant Steps hack, although we do have a bonus.
We do have a bonus.
Yeah,
That's right. We forgot to say. So stick
yeah.
around for the bonus, which might be the most useful and the most fraudulent, I might add.
It is very fraudulent. But our 5th hack for navigating Giant Steps is root shell pretty. What do we mean by root shell? This is a classic open studioism here, right?
Right. Root shell pretty, we don't necessarily associate it with Giant Steps until today.
That's
when
right.
we did, and we realized how well it fits there. So you've got root, shell, 7th and the 3rd, and then any note that sounds pretty.
Yeah.
Could be the 5th, could be the 6th, I like it, be likey, could be the sharp 11 even, right? Is that legal?
That's legal.
Certainly could be the 9th.
I'll allow it.
Either the 9th or the 6th down there. And basically, the idea is that we're taking these notes, they're all going to be non-roots.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, because you got the root down here. And then you're going to port it melodically, right? And you want to
Portamento.
You want to really think about these in terms of voice leading from those 3-note root shell pretty chords. So we've got, say you do the 7th, 3rd, and the 5th.
Yeah.
Then we're going to go to D7, and we'll do your descending thing. And so I'm just moving up, and I'm keeping that top note the same. So I've got the shell on the outside with the 9th on the inside. And then where do we go? It starts to kind of solve itself. Right? 3, 5, 7 now. And now we're going to go B flat major. We can go a little fancy. With the 13th is your pretty note,
Yeah.
and your shell, and your root.
What you're basically doing here is outlining the chords in a very specific way. Like we have our root, we have our, our shell, our guide tones, like important tones, and then some pretty notes. And
Yep.
it helps us to navigate the changes in maybe an interesting way. So even if you play trombone, you can do this. Like you can get through these important notes of the chord in a way that's maybe a little different.
That's right. And no matter what instrument you play, try to get to the piano, and just from the standpoint of learning the form of this tune.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it earlier, like you have to really internalize this somewhat complicated tune. Look, this is the thing, and this is the biggest hack, I would say. This is not even our bonus yet, but on this tune is like really learn the form.
For sure.
Because there's such an inner logic to this. Is one of the most logically constructed and architectural tunes of all time. It's
beautiful.
So it seems like if you only look at it in a linear standpoint and you don't understand it holistically,
Yeah.
it can seem like just a complicated mess. But it's so logical and symmetrical once you learn it, even with the two halves to the tune. So if you give your ears a chance to really absorb the tune, not only with the melody and the root, and the melody and that interpretation, but here we're going for the root shell pretty, or even just root shell. How about just doing that in time for about an hour?
Just sitting on
That's
the
not gonna
piano
kill
and
you.
doing that is going to do so much good for you, for sure. You're right, man. There's nothing more important than that. Getting that
world
form.
peace,
Yeah.
vaccine to the coronavirus.
Vaccine to the coronavirus.
But
yeah,
it's
of
number
course.
3 for sure. But that's how you really start.
Did you say it's number 3 for sure?
This is number 3, behind world peace and the virus, the vaccine. So, but you got to do a lot of that kind of practice, and then how that ports out is to understanding the changes and the form and the architecture of the tune, the inner logic. But then it also gives you some beautiful melodic stuff as you were playing, and then you can combine it with the 4 note. Some more scale kind of stuff.
I love it, man.
Okay.
That's a great hack.
So if you're loving this, I'm loving it. McDonald's. No, we're not loving that place. Are we? No, I don't think so. If you're loving this, how about liking and subscribing? Because we're coming with tutorials like this every week. And if you want to go next level, what do?
You put the bell on.
You put the bell on. You can ring my bell.
Hey, listen, this stuff isn't going to tutorial itself. So give us a like and subscribe. Put the bell on.
Because we're going live every week.
We're doing it all
we
the
do
time,
it
man.
at designated times, and then we surprise folks too. So we're going live. Check us out.
These blue LEDs don't pay for themselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, what's our bonus?
Our bonus.
Giant Steps hack.
Our bonus, this is a hack for pretty much anything, really.
A lot of hacks do this,
A lot of hacks.
but you can do it well. That's the reason.
You could do it well.
No, you can do it. Everybody can do it well.
This is the chromatic bailout.
The chromatic bailout.
Like Morgan Stanley in a financial crisis.
Too big to fail.
Too big to fail.
Now, the trick to doing this so that it doesn't sound like just a jumbled mess is to really concentrate on your time, on nailing the form with probably your left hand or just your general awareness of what's happening, because we're sort of abandoning the harmony with our melodic playing.
Yeah.
Although you don't have to totally do it. So look, this is just based upon running up and down the chromatic scale.
I love a chromatic bailout, man. It saved my ass so many times.
If you think about where you start and where you're hitting at like certain key points rhythmically, though this can make sense still harmonically. So like I'm starting on that major 7th, and instead of going, because that would be a little bit of a downer,
gross.
right?
It's a bit of a downer. Hey.
Now that's a lot of chromatic, so it might be. But I mean, the idea is here, if you're a little bit lost on the changes, play something hip rhythmically,
I mean, you can even take some of these like 3-note shapes, 4-note shapes,
and chromaticize them. Yeah.
I mean, that is a bailout. That's like open up the golden parachute.
That's right.
Yeah.
JP Morgan, here I come.
boy.
Big Papa.
Hey, boy.
My sugar daddy. No, so the thing is with this, though, is you got to really know the form to be able to pull this off. So if you're like,
Ooh, that sounds great, though.
because I'm coming out of it and then
I
I'm
like
going
that.
into the change. Like if you stay out and you're lost, and then especially if you let the rhythm go or something,
This is a good exercise. I don't know if I can play the bass line and do this at the same time. That's good.
Yeah. So you got
What? Oh my gosh. Somebody timestamp that. Somebody timestamp this. Stop.
bailout, chromatic bailout.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Damn. That's
Well,
good.
till tomorrow,
You'll hear it.
which is funny because we don't do this daily. Okay.